Let me ask you a question. And hey, I want you to be completely honest with yourself right now. Have you ever sat down, confident you've studied enough for an exam, pored over your materials for hours, and then walked into the test only to have your mind go totally, completely blank? You look at a question, you know that you studied, but there's just nothing there. If you're not in your head right now, well, welcome to this explainer. I really want to validate that exact frustration. It is an incredibly common experience, and it's exactly why we are breaking down the illusion of passive learning today. This isn't just about getting a better grade or, passing a test. It's about figuring out why you might feel like you're working 10 times harder than everyone else around you, but only seeing a fraction of the results. It's time to look in the mirror and figure out why your brain seems to be working against you. To really get to the bottom of this, we're going to do a rapid-fire personal call-out. So first up, do you spend way more time rereading your notes than actually thinking about them? Think about your typical study session. Are your eyes just kind of gliding over the words you wrote down weeks ago? Or are you actually stopping to process, challenge, and reconstruct those ideas in your head? For most of us, honestly, it's just endless passive rereading. Okay, how about this next one? Have you ever studied all afternoon, put in 4 or 5 solid hours at your desk, but when you finally close your books, you literally can't explain a single concept to someone else? Like, you invested all that time, you sacrificed your whole afternoon, but if a friend asked you to teach them the material, you'd have absolutely zero ability to do it. That right there is a massive red flag that your time is not translating into actual knowledge.
Now, what about this? Do you rely on your highlighter like it's some sort of magic wand? Come on, we've all been there, right? Painting a textbook neon yellow or pink, secretly hoping that those bright colors will magically burn the information directly into our brains without any actual cognitive effort on our part. I mean, it feels productive and it looks super colorful, but is it actually doing anything?
And finally, probably the hardest truth of all, do you avoid practice tests out of sheer fear? Be honest with yourself. Do you put off taking practice exams because deep down you are secretly terrified to see exactly how much you've already forgotten? It is just so much easier to stay in the comfy, safe zone of reviewing your notes than to face the harsh reality of a totally blank practice test. Look, if those questions felt a little bit like a personal attack, I hear you. I really do. I know how deeply frustrating it is to put in the grueling hours, to sacrifice your sleep and your free time, and still feel like you're stuck in the mud while everyone else just breezes by. It is exhausting. But I want to lower your defenses right now and assure you of something absolutely crucial. The problem is not your IQ. It definitely isn't that you're lazy or somehow not smart enough. You're simply using a system that was quite literally designed to fail you. You've just been using the wrong set of tools. Okay, let's dive into this because we are going to fix that today. Our definitive guide and core source material for this explainer is a fantastic book called How to Study Like a Genius: Smart Study Techniques for Faster Learning and Better Memory by S.H. Shadow Books. This source explains exactly where we're going wrong with all those habits we just called out, and much more importantly, it gives us the actual roadmap to fix the whole shebang. Let's transition into Section 1, Familiarity versus True Memory. Here is the core illusion we're dealing with. Our source material clearly shows that rereading creates mere familiarity, not memory. When you stare at a page of notes for the third time, your brain sees the words and goes, "Oh yeah, I know this, I recognize these words." But guys, that familiarity is a total trick. It completely disappears the exact second you close the book and look away. True memory, on the other hand, requires active effort. It requires you to retrieve information from your brain, not just passively input it through your eyes. You literally have to build the neural pathways by working for the information rather than just staring at it. And that brings us to the trap of confusing time spent with learning done. As the source explains, you can sit there with a book open for 6 hours straight, but if your brain is in passive mode, you're going to retain almost nothing. Those marathon sessions, they don't equal superior dedication. They usually just lead straight to burnout. The reality is, the brain actually absorbs information best in small, focused chunks. You will learn way more in shorter, intense periods of active effort than you ever would in half a day of passive reading. Quality of focus entirely overrides the sheer quantity of time. So, if passive reading and marathon sessions are out, what's actually in? Let's move on to Section 2, the Genius System. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is it's time to boldly debunk one of our absolute favorite study crutches. Highlighting often kills memory because it doesn't require you to actually think. Just let that sink in for a second. According to the source, highlighting gives you this total false sense of security. It's a completely surface level habit. Sure, you are moving a bright marker across a page, but your brain isn't doing the heavy lifting of processing the concept. You feel super productive, but you are actually bypassing the exact cognitive effort required to form a lasting memory.
If highlighting is totally passive, we need something active, right? We need to completely redefine practice testing. Most people view testing as this terrifying way to get a grade, like it's an evaluation of your personal worth. But the source explains that testing is actually a vital learning tool in itself. When you force yourself to try and recall an answer, you leave your safe zone. That mental friction, that literal struggle you feel when you are reaching for an answer in your head, is exactly the mechanism that cements the knowledge into your brain. The test isn't just measuring the memory. The test is actually making the memory stick.
And this totally shatters the talent myth. We tend to look at people who just ace their exams and think, well, they're just naturally good at this, they have a gift. But according to our source material, genius-level learners do not rely on genetic luck or some fleeting daily motivation. They succeed because they use superior structured systems. They swap out that passive familiarity for active recall. They use targeted systems instead of just crossing their fingers and hoping the info sticks. It is entirely about structure, not natural talent. So why do we avoid these systems in the first place? That brings us to Section 3, Embrace the Struggle. The reasons we do this are just so incredibly human. Why do we gravitate towards passive methods? Well, because they feel safe, they feel easy. We avoid the hard stuff, like actually testing ourselves, because facing the huge gaps in our own knowledge is just incredibly uncomfortable. Think about it. When you reread, you feel smart. When you take a practice test and get half the questions totally wrong, you feel inadequate. So we subconsciously choose the method that protects our ego, even though it completely sabotages our learning. We're literally choosing short-term emotional comfort over long-term retention. So the crucial point here is this absolute paradigm shift. Struggle is not failure. Struggle is learning. You have to reprogram how you view difficulty. If you're reading a textbook and it feels perfectly easy and smooth, your brain probably isn't storing a single word of it. The friction, the intense frustration of trying to remember, the feeling of your brain actually working hard, that is the actual physical sensation of a memory being formed. You've got to stop working against your brain's natural limits and start embracing the struggle as the literal evidence that you are actually learning. Listen, you are not bad at studying. You were just never taught how the brain actually works. But now you know. You have the potential to learn absolutely anything with the right structured system and a genuine willingness to embrace that active effort. I want to wrap up this explainer by leaving you with a final, kind of provocative thought. If you could suddenly have a photographic memory for just one single subject, like absolutely no struggle required, what would it be? Think about that for a bit. And remember, while we might not actually have magic photographic memories, applying these active systems is for sure the absolute closest thing to it. Thanks so much for learning with me today.